head over to losingmymind.com to check out our latest song, Genocide. Support our work. Now, onto the show. To help you understand why what Elon Musk is doing is so important, I have a tweet here from, what is this, Luke Rudkowski.
I heard about that guy.
Luke, we are changed. He tweeted, "What kind of dystopian nonsense is this bullish? The Twitter fact check of the White House got fact check on Facebook as missing context." This is what Elon Musk is fixing. The White House put out a tweet that said seniors are getting the biggest increase in their Social Security checks in 10 years through President Biden's leadership. There was a tag posted on that tweet that said, actually, this is because of Richard Nixon, and the increase is due to inflation. It's automatic. So the White House deleted the tweet. Luke shared this image, and Facebook, AFP, labeled it as misleading post, claiming Twitter started fact-checking Biden. When you have partisan actors working on your fact-checking, this is what they do. But when Twitter fires them, the legitimate fact-check resulted in the White House deleting their tweet.
Yep. And, I got a warning about this on my personal Facebook page. All I tweeted was the photo of what happened on Twitter saying, now this is a fact check, just being like, hey, this is pretty incredible that this happened on Twitter. And now they're warning me that my posts could be moved lower in the newsfeed. I mean, they're already pretty low in the newsfeed. They get very little engagement, that people are less likely to see them because I shared a photo of what was going on here. Again, this is the fact checkers at war here. And when you're seeing this in our social media landscape, this actually gives me a lot of optimism. It gives me a lot of hope to see this larger battle of ideas finally playing out in such an absurd way where Facebook fact checkers are fact checking a Twitter fact check.
They're helping Biden.
Yeah.
This is the crazy thing.
Yeah.
If Twitter was to remain the same without Elon Musk, they would not have gotten fact checked this way. They would not have deleted the tweet. They were lying to the American people. But on Facebook, you've got this one organization called Lead Stories. They've published fake news about me more than once, and they've had to retract it because they put these fake. There was one. I did a story around the 2020 election, and it said something like Republicans send slate of electors to cast a vote for Trump. They flagged it as fake news. And they said, the Republicans don't have electors. They didn't win. And I said, the Republicans did send a group they called a slate of electors. The first 30 seconds of the video was me saying, these are not the official slate of electors being sent by Republicans. They didn't even watch the video. They fact checked it, and they got my channel demonetized and damaged by lying. They don't even do, this is the game. And you can see it happening right now on Luke's Facebook, on Luke's Twitter.
It happened so many times, it's infuriating to even keep up with because there's dozens of events when either it's CNN issuing a fake copyright claim against me, taking down my live streaming abilities, whether it's Reuters saying that my photo from Davos and all the private jets wasn't real, even though it was an actual photo from Davos. I could keep going on and on how reality is just being manipulated in a way to attack people who just try to give a different perspective, a different side of the story. If you're anti-establishment, you're going to be dinged. You're going to be punished. You're going to be downranked in the algorithm and put in the cyber gulags for daring to express an opinion that these people don't like. And that's absurd. And this is an abuse of power by these big tech social media companies that are really run by intelligence agencies.
These people think that if Republicans win, the Republicans will arrest their children and murder them. Now, I'm sure not all of them think that, but enough of them probably working at Facebook do. And they're saying, I have to do this to save democracy. Fact check false, even though I know it's true.
It's real for them. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes them so dangerous and so willing to do this kind of thing.
Maybe Donald Trump will bring back the mental institutions. And, but not in the, I don't want any negative ones. I want ones that actually help people. I don't like the idea that we send medically ill people, addicted people to prison. People who are unwell need help. They need compassion, understanding. So when someone comes out and calls themselves Frog Self and thinks that Republicans are taking children and murdering them, it's like, you are suffering from a delusion. We're not mad at you because of this. We don't hate you because of this. But you are a danger to yourself and to others. Yeah. And to allow you to go on social media and organize other people who are suffering it's going to hurt more than just yourselves. So what we're going to do is, it's called a 5150, a temporary psychological hold, so that we can assess, I think there's real challenges to allowing the government the power to lock someone up like that. But there's also a balancing act of what do you do when people are legitimately mentally ill and being given positions of power, as opposed to being given help so they can get their heads straight.
Well, I think we've fetishized what is essentially mental illness in many cases. I mean, like transgenderism is obviously one of these things. Until recently, it was understood to at least be indicative of some kind of underlying.
I think it's in the DSM-5. It's considered a mental disorder.
Right.
I think they distinct that from it's distinct from illness.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But the point is that we've not only normalized it, but we glorify it. We encourage that kind of behavior. In other words, we encourage mental illness.
Yeah.
And where these things actually require compassion instead of glorification or simply just actually abusing these people somehow. No, I completely agree.
Specifically, we have the neurodivergent trend. You're familiar? You're not familiar with
Is that like a fancy way of saying autistic or something?
Neurodivergent means
Kinda.
it means you're suffering from a mental disorder or a mental illness.
Okay.
So this starts. I think it starts on Tumblr, where people
Everything
are like,
bad starts on Tumblr.
yeah, somebody would be diagnosed with like ADHD or Asperger's. They would say, I'm neurodivergent, like meaning your brain is different.
Okay, yeah.
They would say that it's not bad to be away from like the norm.
Yeah.
And like, no, but here's the problem. All of these things start from a correct place of, we don't hate you for being divergent. Yeah. Like if you're overweight, I don't hate you. I want you to get healthy. I'd say, cut out the carbs. I did. I lost a lot of weight. Just I want you to be healthy and happy. Yeah. Look, I grew up skateboarding. If you really want to feel good, go to a skate park. Now, there's a lot of snooty people that skate. But if you go to a skate park and you're really bad at skating and everyone can see that you're really bad, and then you finally land your first trick, the whole park erupts. People are screaming and cheering.
Every time.
If you go to a skate park and there's like pros, the best of the best skateboarding, and all you can do is a humble kickflip, and you're trying for an hour and you can't get it, and then you go up the pyramid and you do a kickflip, and it's the worst, it's the ugliest in the world, but you get it, everyone's going to start screaming and cheering and high-fiving you because it's about you. It's about you doing well and doing better. That's how I view things. When I see people who are doing bad or whatever, I want to see them do well. And then I want them to mind their own business so I can mind mine.
But on social media, the exact opposite happens of what you just described. Because when you're not doing well, when you're afraid someone, when you're delusional, when you're paranoid, when you have a mental disorder, you're then praised. You're then congratulated. Right. You're then even promoted in the algorithm, which we have to acknowledge the elephant in the room. And whether it's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Google,
TikTok.
Especially TikTok, especially this instant kind of glorification, this kind of algorithm that has been running our lives, we have to acknowledge that it has had an extremely net negative impact on humanity and its mental health to the point where we are reaching a point that there's no going back from, where people are losing their minds and still somehow deciding to turn it into some kind of content where they turn the selfie camera on and still try to glorize it somehow. And that's nonstop what you see on Instagram, nonstop what you see on TikTok. And whether it's, adultery, whether it's degenerate behavior, whether it's just behavior that's extremely negative for the individual, all of that is glorified on social media, and we should really be taking a step back from that and saying, hey, we should really decide what is going to be happening here with this impact on society.
I think anorexia is a really good example of something we all know and understand is a bad thing, right? It's a negative behavior. What's really interesting is to see how anorexia was spread through basically peer groups. In a thing that's called social contagion, that basically one girl would become anorexic, and then her friends would become anorexic, and then through social media and group chats and things like that, other people who were outside of the immediate friend network would then also become anorexic, right? Because the idea was to get their bodies to conform with some standard, okay? But the difference is that we knew that things like anorexia were spreading through peer contagion, through social networks, but we always knew that it was a bad thing. We always knew that anorexia was something to be treated, not something to be glorified. And so you can basically take this idea of social contagion and apply it to transgenderism, which I keep coming back to, or whatever. There's so many other things that fall under neurodivergent. I don't know. And as opposed to with anorexia, which we acknowledge was bad, we glorify it now, right? Like when someone is skinny, like that's kind of synonymous with being having anorexia. We don't do that when someone is overweight or trans or whatever, or has some other weird thing like ADHD. We glorify these things, and it continues to spread through mimesis.
And so these are anorexia is a mental disorder. I'm assuming it's in the DSM-5. This is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition, and this includes gender dysphoria. So the challenge that we have, I think, is you get banned for bringing this stuff up.
Yes.
You'll say something like, hey, gender dysphoria is listed as a mental disorder in the DSM-5. There was this big push from activists to get it delisted so that it would no longer be considered a disorder. And then what happened was a bunch of prominent activists said, stop. If you get this delisted, you can't get prescriptions for it anymore. It needs to be a medically recognized disorder so that people can go to doctors and get treatment for it. So they were like actually in their activism for like, I guess the status of being considered normal, I suppose. They didn't want to be associated with the disorder. They almost lost their ability to get treatment.
I think I keep coming back to the radium fad a few decades ago. Basically, we
100 years ago?
More
than a few decades.
Right, okay, yeah. Well, we started applying radium to everything, like obviously watches and porcelain, things like that, but people also started to...
drink
it actually wasn't that... It's not as long ago as you think it was.
The women who were doing the painting on the watches would brush their gums.
Yes.
And their faces. Wow. And then what they would do is they would smile and their teeth would glow. Yeah. And then their jaws would fall off a few years later.
They called them radium girls.
Here's a look up radio and the radio endocrinologist. Here's a really good example for our time. For a while, it was believed that if you were a woman, you could take a radium suppository and insert it into your body, and it would improve your female functions.
Oh, wow!
And on the other hand, the radio endocrinologist was a credit card-sized device that, as a man, you would tuck under your scrotum when you went to sleep at night. And the idea is that the radium would make you more virile. That if you had problems with Mr. Poole down there, that it would help you.
Quite literally doing the opposite.
And so when you go to sleep, you tuck it under there, right? And obviously, all this did was sterilize people, really similar to the stuff that we're seeing now, right? In the end, they're just sterilized. Yeah. But the really interesting part of this is that physicians believed in it.
Yeah.
Physicists believed in it.
Yeah.
Members of the U.S. government created entire institutes, like the National Radium Institute.
People used to drink mercury.
Wow. Right. But, and here's another really interesting aspect of it. In order to sell this stuff, like how do I get you to tuck some radium under your scrot, right? Well, I tell you that if you want to be a real man, that this is what you have to do. And so an entire industry emerged to shape marketing, to shape basically conceptions of gender and sexuality that made it desirable to start taking radium suppositories or use the radioendocrinology, because you want to be a real man, don't you? With like a nuclear boner or something.
That sounds like marketing. They came up with a product.
Yes.
They said, this is great. We're going to make tons of money off of this. Yeah. Humans, humans aren't, well, I suppose, depending on how you put it, humans are either stupid or they're not stupid. For the entirety of the planet, we're actually really smart. But who knows what's out there?
Dogs lick their own butts. What are we up against?
Just really quick, nuclearized boners is a great marketing term.
It was, and it was super effective, and a lot of guys went sterile.
Humans are not much smarter than they were. I think what I read was humans are not smarter than they were 40,000 years ago. We just know more. We've accumulated more data, created data repositories. So when a new human is born, all of that knowledge has been collected, and they can read through it and learn it very, very quickly, and then specialize in it. That means several hundred years ago, they would drink mercury because they wanted to cure syphilis and they didn't know what else to do, and they thought it worked, and they were dying. And then we discovered penicillin and antibiotics, and then all of a sudden we started curing a lot of these diseases. Today, so going back then, with the radium scrot tuck thing, they're just people who are like, I'm going to make money, sounds good to me. Yeah. They don't have the data, and then we get the data, and then we're like, hey, maybe you shouldn't do that because it's making your balls fall off.
But it was the marketing that they were doing off of people's manhood.
Did you look it up? Okay.
No, I'm just
right. But what I mean is,
off what you guys are saying.
My point was that they used that the manly stuff was marketed for everything. Right. Like, eat your steak like a real man. Right. There's that famous ad that went viral on Twitter of the husband spanking the wife because she bought bad coffee.
Yeah.
And it's like a lot of that marketing existed no matter what the product was.
So
But-
like browbeating people based on their sexuality is a marketing tool.
They still do. They did.
Well, I
They
mean,
did
the
the Gillette.
transgender
Look at the
surgeries
look at the Gillette commercial. Remember that one?
Yeah.
Don't be a toxic man.
Yeah, now it's
Well,
just the
my
opposite.
my point with the radium thing is that it was a moment where it was like, well, this is what the science says. The science says that this stuff is going to make you more of a man,
Right.
or more of a woman.
And we just didn't know.
And then the humans were the study.
They thought they did know. That's my point.
Right,
The
yeah,
same way that
we
we
didn't-
think we do know now everything.
Did they have
about-
short-term
Exactly.
results? Is that why they
gonna
thought it
ask
was-
about that.
It was like years later, the women's teeth would fall out, their jaws would swell and get cancerous and fall off.
I imagine
Crazy,
a tiny
dude.
bit of radiation is probably good for your body.
No.
Yeah, it's heat.
Well,
you know?
I mean, ionizing radiation is
the
not same
sun
as heat.
gives us some.
You're talking
you
about
want it a little bit.
You're
I'm
talking about thermal radiation, not radio, like ionizing radiation. All right. So, like your cell phone is non-ionizing radiation. I believe it uses what, like microwaves to send signals that don't destroy your DNA. Ionizing radiation rips your DNA to shreds, causing your body to be unable to replicate proteins, and then you die. So, there's a
Right,
big
it
difference.
pulls electrons away.
The National Radium Institute was founded in 1913 by a Dr. Howard Kelly, a physician at Johns Hopkins, and James S. Douglas, who used to work for the federal government. So,
Let's-
So ionizing radiation
trust
is
the
a
science.
result of too much radiation. If radiation gets too insane, then it starts to ionize.
So the radiation you're referring to, I think, is like electron decay, when the electrons are firing off because the element is unstable.
Hey,
That's
don't be
ionizing.
mad at Ian. He's onto something. He's trusting the science. He's
Yes.
trusting the
Yes.
medical experts and the government from day one.
Am I supposed
and
to-
he's doing the right thing according to the
Take the
federal
radium
government and the
suppository.
CDC
All right, all right.
and the FDA.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.